Savage Dragon 107 from May of 2003. Guest starring Fire Breather, Invincible, and Major Damage. There Goes the Neighborhood. It's 48 pages, so let's get into this one. We've got some new names on the credits here. Erik Larsen, writer, artist, of course. John Workman, letterer. Bill Crabtree, colorist. And Josh Eckhorn has the skin of a 10-year-old. It's mounted and hanging over the fireplace. New Kids on the Block, another instant image classic. We open in Washington, D.C. with President George W. Bush. I think it's a pretty good likeness drawn there. This would continue a streak of presidents featured in Savage Dragon. We had Clinton back in issue 41, and then, of course, Obama in issue 145, and then Trump in issue 226. No Joe Biden. I guess it's only two-term presidents that get cameos, though Biden and Harris did receive an endorsement on a variant cover. But anyways, George W. Bush, he's talking about evildoers and developing weapons of mass destruction and a preemptive war, but he ain't talking about Iraq. This Bush is concerned about the floating city of God world, and it's kind of a classic comedy misdirection. But before I move on, let's talk about the Iraq War. I think that'll be fun. So before the war started, there was the largest worldwide protest in history at that point, which stopped nothing. And then soon the Saddam statue was toppled, and Bush lands on an aircraft carrier and declares mission accomplished. All of these events I just mentioned occurred between the publication dates of issue 106 from December of 2002 and issue 107 here from May of 2003. So that's a hell of a lot to happen in 6 months. Just huge geopolitical implications that were hotly debated domestically. So this is Larsen just kind of playing with the contemporary political vernacular, so to speak. So anyways, after the meeting with the president, Dragon has to break up an argument between his teammates on the Liberty League. Super Patriot is far left, and Battle Tank is a right-winger, and their disagreement turns into name-calling. The pinko communist versus the fascist bucket of bolts. Dragon trying to play peacemaker, but to no avail, and the two sides refuse to come together. So this story from 2 decades ago still pretty relevant. So this is a crossover issue, so we better get moving here. This is the introduction of Duncan, aka Fire Breather. There's some kind of violent impact at his high school, and the young superhero decides to investigate. So he flies off to go find whoever is responsible. And back in D.C., there's a press conference, and Dragon answers a few questions. But then Jennifer is directed a question, and she just kind of blows it, stammering and not really answering the question very well. Dragon looks kind of perplexed. Lots of screen tone used in this comic, these dot patterns here. And I mentioned the same thing a few issues ago, and I assumed it was physically applied on the original artwork because Larsen is just old school like that. But he admits in the letters page that these screen tone effects were actually done digitally. So he's started doing that recently on the computer. And I think it looks pretty good, so I'm not complaining. Then in some other city entirely, we meet young Mark Grayson, another high school student, and he gets an urgent phone call from his father that motivates him to run behind this dumpster and change into his superhero costume. And Invincible flies off to fight some unseen enemy. So Larsen says that he was trying to imitate the line work of Corey Walker. That's the artist on Invincible. And I think he got pretty close there. Back in D.C., where the family is having a picnic, Jennifer, regretting her poor performance at the press conference, and she thinks she came off like a blithering idiot. And Dragon starts to attract attention in the park. He's a celebrity now, so people start to gather, slack-jawed and starstruck. The perfect opportunity for a huge battle with this tiki monster. The heroes we met earlier, Invincible and Fire Breather, are up there. And this third one we haven't met yet. That is Major Damage. More on him later. And this tiki monster is named Humongous. Dragon tells the crowd to stay back as he tries to stop this monster. And the new letterer really getting a workout here. and on the next few pages with a sound effects just everywhere on this thing. This random person just gets crushed to death beneath Humongus's foot. Jennifer joins the fight. Everyone just starts hitting this bastard with their best shots, finally breaking Humongus into a heap of rubble. And again, the letterer Workman showing off his best brockabadoom and his scrackablam sound effects there. So the heroes are victorious, but there are casualties. So no smiles on anyone's face, just grim, depressed looks. This is a great panel down here. A dragon looking upset as the ambulance drives off. So now all the heroes have a chance to make introductions. Dragon says, or Invincible says that he's a big fan of Savage Dragon. Fire Breather is interesting here because he's kind of a freaky looking dude, half man, half monster. But he looks at Savage Dragon, who is green and has a fin on his head, but he's popular, he's got a wife and a kid, so Fire Breather here thinks that there's hope for himself after all. Maybe he can lead a normal life. And that's a great bit of character work in literally just 2 panels there. We're just confused by Major Damage, the third hero. He is apparently very shy and just kind of runs off. And that wraps up the crossover. There's one final gag as Sergeant Marvel and the Special Operations Strike Force, they show up to help out in the fight, but they're late to the party. We've got a few first appearances here. Some of these guys in the background, and Young Tough is now Super Tough 2. On to Fanatics. Larson giving a warm welcome to all his new collaborators and guest stars. Another short one-pager reaction to issue 105, including this last one from Neil Adams. I don't think that's the artist. I think it's just a random guy with the same name. And this doesn't read like a letter from the real Neil Adams because I don't think he would open the letter Dear Dragon. And Larson doesn't react like this is his peer or friend, Neil Adams. Moving on to this, man, this is just an incredible pinup by Bruce Timm. This might be my favorite pinup we've seen in a long time. Excellent work there. And coloring by Ruben Rude. Next is Comic Bits by Chris Giarrusso. Pretty funny stuff. G-Man and his brother, they find a wishing well, so he tosses a coin in and he gets a red balloon. And this is totally pathetic. Just a waste of a wish, his brother says. So he's pissed and he tosses his own coin in, and suddenly G-Man's balloon is popped. All right, 48-pager. We got more comic to go. A Deadly Duo story by Matt Talbot and Rich Goodall. Coloring by Eric Larson, I think. And it's a retro comic. The origin of the first Killcat, Alan Williamson. That's the father of Killcat. He was featured in a newspaper telling of his adventures as a lion tamer and fighting the mob. It's a pretty straightforward facsimile of a Golden Age superhero comic, but with some modern elements cutting back to the Deadly Duo. And then in this last panel, they hint that Killcat may be a clone, but I don't know if anything ever comes of that. All right, what the hell is Comics Upside Down? That's because it's a flip book. Major Damage gets a solo adventure with his own cover. This is actually an homage to issue 107 of Fantastic Four, featuring The Thing. So I'll put that up there. I'm going to go back and read some of this this damage report by creator Chris Bailey. Big thanks to Eric for sharing the pages of his funny book with me. I've been a fanatic for years and can think of no better company to keep than the Savage Dragon. I've always read and loved comics. After I left Disney feature animation, where I was an animator, I pulled my influences of Mad, X-Files, and Marvel Comics to create Major Damage. Originally, it was a short comic story. I decided to adapt it into a CGI short film. The 3-minute short took years to finish. Once complete, I decided to revisit the original comic, and that's where Eric came in. Some of these pages were drawn years ago, some recently. So there's a whole lot of fanfare for this character that I have zero recollection of, but He had a lunchbox that they were selling at the MajorDamage.net website. Still operational and updated recently, according to my quick research. I'll link to that in the description if you want to check out the animated shorts yourself. But this is a pretty well done comic. I like the style, and the color is really sharp. So the story is that this kid dresses up for Halloween as his favorite comic character, Major Damage. And then he's kidnapped by these aliens. And then through a case of mistaken identity and best intentions, the aliens turn this kid into a real-life superhero. And they return him back to Earth, where he's has to hide out from his mom so she doesn't discover that he's a gigantic superhero. And he ends up fighting the giant tiki monster that we saw in the main Savage Dragon story. So this is a prequel to the comic on the other side. It's a really well-designed villain. Looks great for animation. Anyway, Major Damage is getting a lot of real estate in this comic. Seems like a well-worn idea, kind of a child-turned-superhero. And now I'm back to where I started. So how do I end this thing? How about this? Issue 108 next week. Adios.